Hello, trading has closed on December 19th, 2023. As always, we'll do our disclaimer, go over our calls, and then make some predictions. So my trading plan for Wednesday, December 20, 2023. Please remember I can be dead wrong, and any trade you make should be made at your own risk. Well, today's pattern was the one with the early low, and tomorrow we look for the pattern with the early high. We have two conflicting influences here. One, we have sentiment indicators, which are decidedly negative for the market, and we have seasonal indicators, which are decidedly positive. At some point we said we should have a drop, and we had a good chance of a drop after yesterday's trade, but we said if we gapped and promptly took out this high, the idea was killed, and that's what happened. Here's what we said. Tomorrow has the early high. Well, at some point these sentiment indicators are going to work. It just doesn't have to be tomorrow. We just have to be prepared. We got an ultimate signal here, was a buy. That worked. MEJT says this is a false move. We're going to retrace to 47.56.33. If we gap up, the number remains, but not the date, which is tomorrow. Well, this is a wall into the close. We consolidate for hours, then right when all the big money goes home, we gap up to we move sharply higher to a new high. Far more often than not, that's a false move, and we'll gap down tomorrow under this low. But that gap is only temporary, and eventually this fills and we go higher. Now it's possible to have the same comment about yesterday's move, that that's a wall with gap, and if that is what this is, this tends to fill. And more often than not, it fills pretty quickly. So if we do gap down tomorrow, which we won't know until tomorrow, we're going to have a tentative target, not a requirement, to undercut this low from Monday's close. So if we do drop down, if we do gap down, there's a good chance we see not only 47.56.33, but also undo all of today's gains. We now have a combo sell signal with all the rules being obeyed. These aren't as reliable as I'd like, but it does pay attention to them. It means that we're overextended. Now we also have 8 bars here of a new setup. Bar 9 could well print tomorrow. If it prints over 47.98.55 tomorrow, the whole sell signal is canceled and we have a recycle. If we don't print over that, but we stay over 47.38.57, we have a 9.13.9 combo sell signal, which in DeMark's work is a very negative pattern. Again, this just marks an area where you're overextended. It doesn't mean you have to drop immediately, even though that will happen often when this works. Well, here's a trend line. You moved up to it in a straight line. You either gap over the line or the line wins, meaning if you move over this line without gapping, it probably won't stick. Now, this isn't a cup with handle pattern because the handle is too high, but the same principle applies when you have a straight line move and then an upsloping handle. If this trend line is broken, which doesn't have to happen, but if this trend line breaks, you can retrace the entirety of this move down to here in the 4500s. So if you gap up here, it's a pretty strong rally. There have been all kinds of candidates for highs before. We've just blown through them. But we have rallied to this trend line. We do have sentiment indicators and demarc indicators which are compatible with a high in this area. I just don't like calling for big drops the last 2 weeks of the year, but you never know. I mean, if we move down here, it could be a significant drop before the rally resumes. Hasn't happened yet. Well, tomorrow's pattern has a really high regardless of where we open. Typically it's a bearish day, has a low in the final hour, but if it isn't bearish, if it's bullish instead, usually in days to come you see more strength. We have a lower MEJT target. Unless we gap up smartly, the rules call for it to print. Don't forget we have a number of these which haven't printed, and when you have a strong impulsive move, that's when these are more likely not to work. But I'm going to stick with it. If we don't gap up, we have a target. We're at a significant trend line. If the rally is to continue unabated, we should maintain a gap over the line. Gapping over it, not holding, it's not good enough. We hit a wall into the close. Often that's followed by gapping down. Sentiment indicators remain on the sell, but these aren't pinpoint indicators. Seasonal influences can prevent a big drop until next year. We only have 7 more trading days in 2023, and these don't really pinpoint tops exactly. A DeMarc combo sell triggered today, and if we close over 47.98.55 tomorrow, the count recycles, meaning the sell signal goes away. We have to begin to count again. But if we don't print this, if we do close over 47.38.57, that's a 9.13.9 combo sell. That's a very bearish pattern in his work. I'll grant you this last 9 usually starts within 3 bars of bar 13, but that's not a hard and fast rule. It didn't apply here. So we've had a number of possibilities of the rally stopping without breaking any rules, and we do think we're going much, much higher. But sentiment eventually is going to win out. This is yet one more candidate for the end of the move, but if we gap up, we have this 47.70.19 target, my last higher target. Nothing says it can't print if we gap up. If we gap up over that trend line, we show we could just keep going up. We're just in one of those situations where if we do gap down, if we do have a drop, there's a good chance we're going to see 47.56.33. There's a good chance we'll undercut this low and potentially significantly lower than that if we start to move down. And that will most likely be obvious before the open. If we gap down smartly under this low, it has really everything we need for a sizable decline lasting more than a day, but it hasn't happened yet, and if we gap up over here, the whole idea is killed. So we'll see how we open tomorrow. It's a pattern with the early day, the early high. Usually it's a negative pattern, but we'll have to see what happens at the open, and that's today's call.